This is an RNZ podcast.
Kia ora and welcome to Context with me, Corin Dan.
And me, Guyon and Corin.
Now, context is the backstory to the front page story.
We take an issue that is making headlines today and we trace its long shadow back to try to figure out how we got to where we are today.
But there's a catch, of course. Only one of us knows the topic we are talking about.
We take turns, of course, being fair and balanced folks. So, Corin, you're up today. What are you going to drop on me?
Well, I feel like I might have bitten off more than I could chew here, Guyon. I have to be honest, and welcome, everybody.
You're keeping me in suspense.
Yeah, we are going to look at the rules of Parliament. The rules of the game here, which is what they call standing orders and speakers' rulings. And it is pretty, the more I looked at it, the more I went, why am I doing this?
We're going to geek out today. This is Geeksville, brother.
We are totally going to geek out. But what I want to do here, before we rip into it, is just a wee preface to say it is a very detailed, complicated, at times feeling impenetrable sort of a system. It's built up over 175 odd years of Parliament and precedent. We can't go into all of that today. So what we're going to do, try and stick to some of the key themes about why rules are important, why some of them don't work, why some of them do work, how have they evolved. Big questions like that, because I think it strikes right to the heart of democracy and institutions, which, as you know, Guyon, are under threat all around the world. So I just want listeners and viewers to think about that as we enter a world where a lot of institutions, including Parliament and politics and the media, are facing a myriad of threats. So that's my little proviso. And if anyone's really wanting to geek out, I would suggest go and read Phil Smith's stuff on the House. That's just my one little promo for that. Let's rip into it.
If we find 6 of 68 government MPs with a spine, we can stand on the right side of history.
That is completely unacceptable to make that statement. Withdraw it and apologise.
No.
Then leave the House for the rest of the week.
Happily.
So, what is happening there, Guyon?
Well, that's obviously Green co-leader Chloe Swarbrick expressing her displeasure about New Zealand's failure to recognise Palestine as a state, or I should be a little fairer than that, taking a month or so to determine what their path of action is going to be.
Indeed it was. And here's the interesting thing, and it's where we're going to focus today. Where do you think she went wrong? Because this was a debating point and is something that has come up. What part of the rules do you think she broke here?
Yeah, well, it would have been her reference to a lack of courage, which MPs take great exception to. So I think it was, who was it? Was it Paul Keating said that the member is a shiver looking for a spine to crawl up? And the Aussies are a little bit more belligerent about that. But that would have been the provision that she would have breached, accusing. You're not allowed to call someone a hypocrite. You're not allowed to call someone a liar in Parliament. You can call them lots of things. And so I think she transgressed, or was seen to by Speaker Brownlee there, for saying that those MPs lacked courage.
Absolutely right. And that is the issue here. And that would be, for the real nerds out there, that'll be standing orders, which is, we're going to get to the definitions around what that means, but that's effectively the rules. There's about 400 of these written standing orders. I think that would probably be Standing Order 120, possibly 121, which deal with, disorderly language and that type of thing. And I'll get to that in a second. But what is interesting here is some people think that if Chloe Swarbrick had actually just said the government lacked spine, she probably would have been okay. And that is the key point to sort of remember here when we think about debates and insults of other MPs and why we can't have them. It's very much personal. It's very much about the person, because the focus here is to make people play the ball, not the person, so to speak. You want Parliament to be debating ideas. You want it to be debating issues. You do not want it descending into chaos of insults.
No, that's right. No, like you, we both did the same job, didn't we? We were both political editor at TVNZ I did 6 years or so. I think you did a couple of terms. It's like doing a lag, isn't it? And I think I did
PTSD.
I think I did 14 or 15 years watching those guys in the House for newspapers and TV over the years. And you will find that any personal reference to a member, like you're not even allowed to say so-and-so is absent from Parliament. That used to be a transgression of the rules. What surprised me about the Chloe Swarbrick ruling was she didn't actually name an MP who had been lacking a spine. She just said if you could find so-and-so members who had one. So that did surprise me.
Yeah, and it surprised even Winston Peters got up and said he thought that the Speaker had overreached there. And Winston, he said he didn't agree with a thing that she said, but then defended her. And let's have a listen to another clip from Parliament which has been referred to in the Chloe Swarbrick case. Let's have a listen to it. It's John Key.
Jordanian pilots are burnt to death, when kids execute soldiers, when people are out there being beheaded. I'm sorry, but this is the time to stand up and be counted. Get some guts and join the right side.
That was around the time of New Zealand joining the fight against ISIS. Yes. And it was pretty powerful, wasn't it? But you could mount a case to say, well, why wasn't he punished in the same way that Chloe Swarbrick was, which was to be effectively suspended, and we can get to the details around how all that works in good time. But what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a very fair case. And it seemed to me that the punishment meted out to Chloe Swarbrick seemed disproportionate for what she's said. I think a lot of people pointed out at the time that it seemed okay to use the C word in Parliament, which Brooke Van Velden did, albeit quoting an Andrea Vance column over the pay equity changes. But it did seem a pretty disproportionate punishment for Chloe Swarbrick. And
what I've seen this is interesting because what I've seen Jerry Brownlee say here is he and this is actually really interesting because I think I've heard a lot of speakers going back through the files say this. He wants to raise the standards. He thinks there is a perception that somehow the Parliament has become, too unruly, and from time to time that crops up, doesn't it? People are, and this comes back to the idea, I guess, of public confidence in the institution and the running of Parliament. So he's now sort of saying, well, I'm drawing a line in the sand here. I want to make the standards better. So I guess that's where he's trying to come from on that one. As I say, I think I've heard that a few times from a few speakers looking into my notes on this.
Yeah, standards have changed. And again, Winston Peters, who's been in Parliament since 1978 with a couple of times on the bench, if you like. And he's mentioned this about dress standards in Parliament. You used to, I don't know if you remember, even as a press gallery journalist, you had to wear a suit as a man, even to be in the press gallery.
Do you still have to?
Nah. Well,
you certainly used to have a tie.
Yeah, but, and MPs now, I can't talk for those of you watching this on video. I'm wearing a T-shirt. But, you weren't allowed certainly weren't allowed to rock up in the sort of kit that you are nowadays in Parliament. So that's changed, and they actually had quite a fight over that, didn't they? I think it was the Greens or the Māori Party who determined that you put up a thing saying you shouldn't have to wear a tie, and they don't now. In terms of actual, criticisms and language and things. You get spurts of this, don't you, where they've come out and say standards are lowered. I don't know that anyone would be offended by saying that someone hadn't got guts. I would have thought that the focus needed to be on answering questions that are put to them, and being specific about that and giving public accountability and transparency rather than whether you're flinging some insults around.
I think what I'd say about that is that it's clear that MPs have constantly tested that boundary about what you can call someone and what you can't, and come up with all sorts of ways of saying someone's a liar but not using the words. Well,
do you remember, I don't know whether this is in your prep, so I hope I haven't issued a spoiler here.
No.
Do you remember Judith Collins on the David Benson Pope affair?
Well, I thought about that one because that was pretty...
a liar, a bully and a pervert was said in Parliament. So, that is a privileged statement, and it was said in Parliament. But that was incredibly strong language.
Well, let's just talk about that then, because just very quickly as a side note on parliamentary privilege, and again, I want to come back to big overarching concepts here. MPs are given an incredible rein to effectively have free speech and say what they want in Parliament by what you mentioned, which is parliamentary privilege, meaning inside the debating chamber they can't be sued for defamation. That's an incredible privilege that they have. The flip side of that is they aren't to lie. And if they mislead the House, they have to come back and correct it. And if they are found to have deliberately misled the House, then they can be punished. So there are responsibilities. And that is, again, coming back to this idea about Parliament being a place where we have obviously good lawmaking, where there is transparency, but where people can hold the government to account. And it's those rules which ensure those principles, I think, stay in place. So as annoying as the rules might be sometimes, I've started to come around to them a little bit as I work my way through them. And there's, oh my goodness, there's a lot of them. Let's just quickly go through. I want to just, because there's 3 components to the rules too. I'll try not to get too bogged down here. So we got your standing orders. There's 400 of them from what I can see. And they've all got sub-paragraphs and often MPs will be frantically jumping into their little cabinets. You'll see them in the debating chamber, won't you, getting out their little book and frantically rifling through. And they, as you say, deal with unparliamentary language, personal reflections. It's a big no-no to question someone's motives. That's a big... You can't... And you certainly can't...
Or to say that they have been led by a group outside the House. Yeah. I remember this was often brought up. So if
Key principle.
If you're saying that you're acting on behalf of an industry, or you've been lobbied or paid off or something, or led by forces outside the hall.
We've got to have confidence as the public in this system. So, but the one point about that, so that you've got all those rules around what you can and can't say and the lying thing, I think you've got to understand too, don't you, that the Speaker can't make a ruling, can't judge whether someone's lied in real time. It's pretty difficult to do, right? So they have to take that MP's word at face value. So you can't call them a liar. You certainly can't call the Speaker a liar. If they turned out they did lie or had misled, well, that's a different matter. That gets dealt with afterwards.
Yes, and they have to come back at the earliest opportunity. So people watching the House sometimes will hear this and they'll see this. They'll see a member rise to their feet and say, I wish to make a statement in reflection of an answer I gave another time. So as I understand it, you have to make take the earliest opportunity to correct the record, and then that will be written into Hansard, which records the daily proceedings of Parliament. So yeah, that's taken very seriously, and a member, an MP, has to take the earliest opportunity to correct the record.
And it's always a bit of a shock in the gallery if you work in the press gallery and someone's going to rush back to the House and go, someone's making a personal statement. Yeah. They're coming back to correct the record. What have they done? And I can remember that happening a few times. Now, the second element. So if you think of the standing orders as almost like a written constitution, almost like the written procedural rules, making sure Parliament works so it flows and everything happens. And they can be changed every 3 years. There's a committee of MPs gets together and they can make changes there. It would probably, by and large, it's going to need consensus, which is a good thing, right? You want everyone to agree on the rules, although I'm not sure it technically does. But I think you'd be very unwise for any government to try and make standing order changes without the support of everyone. The second element is the Speaker's rulings, which are a bit like, I think I've heard it described like common law. So the Speaker's making rulings constantly. Did that person really say that person, was that acceptable language or not? Can you call them a wally? Apparently you can't. Or can you call them, can you say... So they're making those judgments in the heat of the moment all the time, and then they go away and reflect and make rulings, and that evolves over time as well. So you've got a database of Speaker's rulings to pour through as well.
Yeah, that's sort of like setting precedent, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's just like, you can see why speakers get tangled up and, it does require a lot of brain power to be a speaker. Now, the third element, really of the rules is the Speaker's enforcement, and this comes, but we'll bring it back to the Chloe Swarbrick element because she was named. Now a lot of people would go, "What's this business with naming?" I don't remember when I was 10 years in the gallery. I didn't see a lot of people named. I saw a few. I certainly remember it being sort of in hushed tones from some of the old guard there, going, "Oh, someone's been named. It's a big deal." It effectively is a suspension, right? You're out for one day. You lose your pay, but the Parliament has to vote on that. The Parliament has to. So the Speaker, I think, says this person's going to be named, and then they have to. The Parliament backs it, and away they go. That's what happened with Chloe Swarbrick. The first person named in the New Zealand Parliament was 1887. The member was, this was the Sir Julius Vogel incident, it's called. Vogel accused an MP, Mr Thompson, of being in, quote, want of manners, and refused to withdraw his words. The Speaker, Sir Maurice O'Rourke, formally named him, and that was the first time that sanction was used. So 1887, this goes back a long, long way. Let's have a listen.
Was Winston in Parliament at that point?
Well, he has certainly been named a few times, but let's have a listen to someone else who's been named a few times. Have a listen to this one.
Soft on drugs like the government.
Order. Right, no, come back, please. Come back, please. The member will resume his seat. I'm invoking Standing Order 86. I name Nick Smith for grossly disorderly conduct. No, there is no point of order at this point. We now go to the question. Right, the question now is that Nick Smith be suspended from the service of the House. Those who are of that opinion...
Yeah,
So
that was Speaker Mallard, wasn't it?
Yes, and that
Trevor
laid it
Mallard.
out pretty clearly, didn't it, about how that process works. It isn't always as clear as that, because when Chloe Swarbrick was named, it took actually a day because he booted her out of Parliament, which you can do. You can just be told to leave. That's the sort of slightly lesser sanction, which she initially was. But he sort of said, "Oh, you're out for the week," which was a little confusing. The next day, he had said, "You need to apologise, and if you don't, then you'll be named." She didn't apologise. She got named. Let's have a listen to Nick Smith again. He's one of the repeat offenders here, really pushing the boat out with Trevor Mallard.
I must respond to claims around where this residual levy has come from.
Order.
Oh, look, Mr. Chairman.
The member will stand and apologise.
For saying what? I apologise for saying Mr. Chairman.
The member will now stand, withdraw and apologise without reservation, or he will leave the chamber.
I unreservedly apologise.
Dr. Nick Smith will leave the chamber.
Yeah, that is gold. He got booted for sarcasm.
Yeah, you can just hear the contempt, can't you? It's
Yeah, well,
fantastic audio.
that's the word. No, that's a very good word. I mean,
Well,
I guess
true,
you cannot use contempt with the Speaker. The Speaker, this is a very good segue into the next element I wanted to look at, which is the power of the Speaker and the Speaker's office. Incredibly powerful, third most powerful position in New Zealand politics. Not quite like the US President, though, is it? Where you sort of, they're like literally, they'll take over the place. I don't know whether that would happen here, but they are technically behind the GG and the PM in ranking, the Governor-General, that is.
Yes.
But, I mean, you can't, they are incredibly powerful in that role, and you can't question the Speaker. You can't accuse the Speaker of bias. And now the Speaker's election is interesting too, and I'm going to get you to help me out here with another piece of audio, because the Speakers are elected by their peers, by Parliament, but there has been some interesting cases over the years. Have a listen to this and tell me what's happening.
So I hope we will have more broad debate, more open debate, but generally debate rather than simply a competent role of trying to point score. And, of course, I think the public are quite right. The behaviour in Parliament in the last few years has deteriorated markedly, and I hope it'll be improved.
Any guesses?
It's not Tapsell, is it?
It is. Well done.
Yeah, so I would estimate that was 1993.
Yep.
Jim Bolger had narrowly defeated Mike Moore's Labour Party in their first term, And it was a knife-edge election night, and Mike Moore had described it as the night of the long knives, and it was a very close election. Bolger famously uttered the words "bugger the pollsters" because he thought he was going to win significantly. And what National had to do was to take Peter Tapsell, who was a Labour MP, and make him the Speaker. Now, this was the last FPP election, first past the post. And back in those days, the Speaker had a sort of a casting vote, or their vote could be taken with their party. And so to take him out of the equation, you increase National's wafer thin majority. I think they had Jim Anderton's Alliance Party, which had 2 MPs, and so they had enough wiggle room with Tapsell's introduction. Is that roughly right?
That's bang on. That's absolutely perfect. And he was, of course, the first Māori speaker, a Māori MP. I think it was Eastern Māori at that point. That seems to be the one. Well, there might have been a case during the war or near after the war, but that was a pretty historic event, and obviously MMP completely changed.
Well, it does. So it doesn't. That's not in the equation under MMP anymore.
No, because the Speaker's vote is part of the proportionality of the Parliament, the party vote in Parliament. So it wasn't the same, whereas everyone else had their own seats. This, of course, always raises perennial questions about speakers being biased. And I can't remember a speaker that hasn't been accused from time to time from the other side of feeling like they've been biased or not biased.
I would throw in Lockwood Smith's name there. I don't know whether you were planning to talk about him.
I was going to mention it, but I think, he was pretty good, wasn't he?
Well, I think he really was, and his own side. So he was Speaker in the John Key years, and he was being eyed up for a ministerial position. There was some minor controversy, which we probably don't need to go into, and so he was determined that he wasn't going to be part of the executive, and so Key made him put him forward as Speaker. But he was bloody meticulous.
Well, he was a game show host, wasn't he? That was a W3. He was the host of it. No, but he was.
I found, in my humble opinion, watching Parliament, that he was the best speaker I saw, in my opinion. He was meticulous and he was tough on the government, which is what you need, right?
Yeah, you've got to buy into the position. You've got to be like this. I'm above party politics here. I'm going to make this place run. It's going to be fair. There's going to be confidence in it.
But they were frustrated with him, which I thought was a good sign. His own guys, the National Party.
Hey, let's have a quick listen to someone who did arguably question the impartiality of a speaker. Let's have a listen to a former leader of the opposition.
The member knows that he will resume his seat when I stand up. He will start off by withdrawing and apologising for not doing that.
I'll withdraw and apologise.
I want to remind the member that he's testing my patience.
A point of order.
A point of order.
I would just ask you, Mr. Speaker, go and reflect on the tape when you go back, as I know you do, because it does just rather seem that your left ear is rather more acute at picking these things up than your right.
Leave the chamber.
That was Simon Bridges, who became fond of yaks after leading the opposition. But of course, he was a Crown prosecutor, wasn't he? Or at least a Crown solicitor. And you often find that, it's quite similar to law, isn't it? And he did a good job of
and there are certainly some MPs who thrive on the minutiae of the 400 standing orders, which I sort of looked at, and others who don't. Very quick, just a couple of quick mentions on Speaker, because we had a first female speaker. Let's have a listen to her.
Supplementary question, Rodney Hyde.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
It's a point of order. The Right Honourable Winston.
No, I want to ask something. Question. Turn.
Well, would you both?
Well, when you get called, it'll be your turn.
Otherwise, you'll both leave the chamber, and no one will be asking a question which will solve the problem. Please seated.
That, of course, was Margaret Wilson, who was a formidable politician and a formidable speaker. I'll be honest, intellectually, she was pretty terrifying to interview because she was sharp.
And just a quick war story on that one, because you can run foul of the speaker as a journalist too, and especially as a broadcast and especially as a television journalist. And she reprimanded me quite severely a couple of times. And on reflection, I'd probably need to stand, withdraw and apologise, but I'm quite comfortable sitting where I am. But I think we were, and it was me and it might have been Paddy Gower, I think it was, and that's right, we were chasing Chris Carter, who was a Labour MP at the time, and he'd racked up a bunch of expenses and become one of those scandals. He spent lots of money overseas on something. And we were trying to get him to answer. Of course, he wouldn't front up. And so we were chasing him down the corridor and down stairwells and stuff like that. And of course, in those days, there were only specified parts of the Parliament where you were allowed to film, and we'd breached those rules because we were running after the guy. And I think she banned us. She and the poor camera operators at TVNZ were banned from having their cars parked under the building, so they had to carry their kit across the road, and it so affected them more than it did us. But yeah, you could run foul of the Speaker for breaching a select committee. Sometimes you'd get leaked a select committee report, and if you were brave enough, you'd run it. But you could run foul.
Well, you could run foul if you're on the wrong part of a corridor, as you say. If you're on the wrong, there were certain areas. I mean, that's the other thing we should remind people here. The Speaker's almost all-powerful in the sense the police can barely even come onto Parliament's grounds
that's right.
without being
Parliament's
invited.
Landlord. And
they are powerful.
Yeah, and they're Parliament's landlord, if you like, too. So, and you saw that with Mallard and the
and the result is they can live there as well. They've literally got an apartment in Parliament.
Yes, that's right. And that was big controversy with the anti-vaxxers or the people who didn't like the mandates because Mallard, they were camping on his lawn, and he decided to play them Barry Manilow, was it?
Baby Shark and sprinklers or something. That's right. And he was out on his balcony, effectively. When the people will remember the images of him standing around. That's like literally his front porch where there's an apartment. I'm going to jump now to a pop quiz. So we're going to do a little pop quiz here. We're going to do a little context.
This is probably the world's first pop quiz on standing orders.
Yeah. No, this is going to be a pop quiz on who said that. It is the context pop quiz. Maybe we can bring it back at some other issues as well. And I think that just before we do, the point is here, politicians over the years, and I'll talk a bit about media and the evolution of rules as it's got stricter over the years, have got very good at, there are performers. There are people who know that if they can pull off a great one-liner, a great zinger, they can, are quick on their feet, they've got wit, they've got charm, they can use that to great effect. It would have been in newspapers, then it would have been in your radio, then it was on TV, then it's online, now it's TikTok. I mean, it hasn't really changed, has it? It's the same thing. So let's go, pop quiz context. Who said these? Who said this? Zip it, sweetie.
That's Paula Bennett.
Well done. Paula Bennett. Do you know, extra point for who it was to?
Yeah, I was going to say Jacinda Ardern, but that probably isn't right.
No, you get it. That's right. That's two ticks. Yep, very good. Okay. The Prime Minister is full of puffery and bovine scatology.
Oh, that's a Peters line, no doubt. That's Winston Raymond Peters. But bovine scatology is definite. That's no doubt about that.
Yeah, you're so right. It is. I think it absolutely is. It's Winston Peters to John Key. Now, this is a goodie, and it's been a controversial one, this one, actually. Eat that, you lost, we won, it goes, it's as simple as that.
Yes, that's Michael Cullen. It would have been, I would imagine, about November 99, maybe a little later, after Labour's win, and he was probably raising the top tax rate to 39 cents in the dollar. It's definitely Cullen.
Yes, you're absolutely right. He had a few good ones, didn't he? What was that great one he said about Treasury? Ideological burp. When they said something he didn't, they came up with some report about something he didn't like it. Yeah, it's an ideological burp. Here's another one. They're going to get harder now, I think. He could go down the Mount Eden sewer and come up cleaner than when he went in.
I'm going to say Mike Moore.
Oh, come on. Yes.
Do you know why I said Mike Moore?
No,
Is it Mike Moore, is it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, because he won the Mount Eden seat, you see. That was the only... I don't know that quote, so that was a guess. But I said Mike Moore because he won that seat. And he's quite fond of winning Mount Eden. Yeah.
That's an easy one. Here's an easy one. OK, Boomer.
Yeah, that's Chloe Swarbrick. Yep.
Two, Can you think of the MP?
Yeah, it was a national MP.
Brief leader of the opposition?
Yeah, was it the guy who had his mental health issues, wasn't it? And resigned as leader.
Todd Muller, yes.
Todd Muller, yeah.
We'll give you half on that one.
Yeah.
This one's I don't even know. I put it in Quiggly Wiggly.
Quiggly Wiggly. That's a reference to Derek Quigley, I presume.
Yes.
Yeah, who was sacked for opposing Think Big in the Muldoon years.
You're right, Mike Moore. He said that after Derek Quigley evaded a question. So that was Mike Moore is coming through with his wit, wasn't he? Here's an interesting one too. Might be tricky, we'll see. He is a SPM, a stale, pale male, and that is nothing to be ashamed of.
Yeah. I was going to say one of the Green MPs, but then with that qualification at the end, I was thinking maybe someone else. I don't know that one.
Paula Bennett to Phil Goff. She also called him an angry smurf. Here's possibly my favourite of the list, and I'll give you full 2 points if you can get this. Such an arrogant little prick.
Oh, that's just Jacinda Ardern, isn't it?
Yes,
on David
it is.
Seymour.
Well done.
On David Seymour?
She didn't say it on Mike.
Yeah.
That's the key point here.
Yes.
She was annoyed that he had pretty good question actually. He'd pressed her on. He basically called for her to give an example of something that she'd tried to say, and she was caught off mic. And that's an interesting point actually we should say for people here. So someone's controlling the mic for people, and then the interjections fly all over the place off mic. But they still get recorded in Hansard if they get heard, which is the official record, that the written down bit.
Yes.
So they can still turn up. And just one more to finish off. Behaves like a drunk uncle at a wedding.
Yes, I think that's about Winston Peters, and possibly from Christopher Hipkins.
Well done. I think you must have just about got 8 out of 10 there, or something like that. Anyway, well done. Excellent pop quiz. I hope I can do as well in return at some point.
I'm going to get you back to that, mate.
Return the favour.
If you've done me a pop quiz on standing orders,
you did really well. That's pretty impressive. Hey, one point I want to make here is that Parliament's rules have actually, as I sort of dug into this and as I say, started to get slightly terrified by what I'd bitten off, it's pretty clear actually that Parliament's rules have got a lot stricter over the years. So it's worth remembering, so Parliament kicks off around 1854. I think they had the first year in Auckland, then to Wellington.
Do you know what the first piece of legislation they passed was?
No, I don't.
A law making it legal for them to drink in the House and giving reprieve to all the MPs who had breached the law previously.
Yeah, well, that's pretty ironic, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it is ironic because I think it sounds like early days it was a bit of a pretty wild and not particularly...
Yeah, there's a great history. There's great history of MPs drinking in the House. Do you remember Nandor Tanchos, what he said about that?
No, I don't.
Drunk in charge of the country, and he was making allegations that people were drinking late at night because Parliament sits till 10 p.m. some nights, and there's a bar on site, so that's
well. In the early days too, there was no closure motion, which means people could talk forever. That they really could. And they brought in a law around 1894. When they started to... Now, before that, we'd had the press gallery turn up at 1870. They started to clean up their act a little bit then, I suspect. Also, Hansard was a little bit earlier than that too. So once there was actual records of what they're saying, you can imagine that those people in Parliament were realising, we're going to have to behave ourselves a little bit more here because there's scrutiny. So let's big up the media a little bit there as well with the arrival of the gallery. 1894, though, they brought in the ability to close debates. So people couldn't just stonewall and talk for 4 days or whatever they did because they just weren't getting enough done. At the time, the opposition was unhappy about that. A key point here too, we basically took the Westminster system from England and plonked it in New Zealand, 100%, just like bang, slapped it down. And even at the time, there was apparently people saying, what on earth are we doing just aping this, that was the word used, the system from England and just plonking it down in New Zealand like that. So, it was already a pretty established system that came in from there. There's a couple of key points in terms of the evolution. the MMP era, there was an era when they brought in select committees a bit prior to that, I think around the 70s. You had committees and MPs' rights evolved, but really it was around MMP when we see the Parliament we're very familiar with now, with 10-minute speaking slots, lots of rules and regulations around proportionality of Parliament and making sure that everyone gets to speak. Because one of the good things about the Westminster system coming to New Zealand was definitely, whether it's been in practice is another matter, was that the system is designed to protect minorities, to make sure that there is transparency and accountability of the government and the process works, but that those minorities get a voice and can speak and can criticise the government. So that's one good element that has come from that. And before I come to you, Guyon, I'll get a quick example of that. We'll go to a clip here of question time, which we can talk about because that's another whole thing. Let's play a clip here, and you can probably help me out a little bit on this one.
To the best of my recollection, I haven't used my. I've answered OIA responses and personal and parliamentary questions correctly, and to the best of my recollection, that's what I've done.
Yeah, that is Claire Curran, who was broadcasting minister, right, at the time. And I think that was in reference possibly to something quite close to RNZ.
Well, there'd been a couple. So that was a second. She actually went on leave after that. That blew up because she was being questioned about the use of private emails. But there'd been the whole episode with where her diary entries and meetings concerning RNZ prior to that. She was under huge pressure as a minister, and it's just a good example of an MP who was prosecuting her in Parliament. And
it was Melissa Lee who did that.
It was Melissa Lee.
Yeah, it was Melissa Lee who proved pretty adept at that. Didn't have...
And I don't want to pick on Claire Curran because it's like... But she was a good opposition MP, a hard-working MP, but she lost it in that moment in the House, and that was a devastating moment for her.
And just with irony, the same thing really happened to Melissa Lee, unfortunately, who picked up the poison chalice of broadcasting, had been a pretty good opposition member and wilted as a minister, frankly, was relieved of that.
You would have watched a lot of Question Times, and I was there 10 years, you were there 15 odd years. Question Time for people, let's just quickly explain to people what's going on here. So the opposition gets to lodge questions with the Speaker by 10:30 in the morning, and they usually get 6 or so primary questions. Nowadays, they don't even specify what they are. They might just say...
No, they just say, does the government stand by all the statements and actions?
And then they get a whole lot of sups, right? They can then follow up.
Yeah. And again, just to quickly go back to Lockwood Smith, who was superb as a questioner. And I think that's why he was such a good speaker, because he was forensic in his questioning and he really got places. This broad brush approach then allows you to take on 5 or 6 different fronts and ask the Prime Minister about the price of butter and why he hasn't done something about something else. And I don't know whether it's that successful, and it appears to me to be more about getting your clip on television or Instagram that night. The other thing I'd say about the English system that we talked about is, here's the difference. In New Zealand, you have what they call patsy questions. Yeah. So I can get up and say, as a national backbencher, what recent announcements has the government made about whatever it is, and allow the minister to stand and give some basically PR. Now, in Britain, it's Prime Minister's questions, and what I like about that is that you're really giving it death to the Prime Minister, and you'll see backbenchers, stand up and give their own Prime Minister from their own party a hard time. And I really like that because it's about accountability. So I don't know if there's a strong argument for allowing patsies in the House. I know they've looked at this before, but, we don't really... governments can put out any number of press releases and put out any number of...
Well, it's become a big issue in this Parliament, actually, now that you mention it, because Jerry Brownlee is constantly pulling the government up because there's been a Speaker's ruling, again, somewhere along the way, that you're not to use that patsy question answer to turn around and attack the opposition. I mean, that's not what it's there for, right? To be attacking the opposition. And so he's constantly being, members of Labour are constantly standing on their feet and calling saying a point of order, which is they want to argue a point of the rules, saying, hey, this person here just attacked the opposition. You're not supposed to be able to do that. So that's become quite a contentious issue in this current Parliament, and as a good example, I think, of how that. One thing I would say about the rules and as they've evolved, I think when I was first in Parliament, there was a limit to how many supplementaries there could be on each question. Now, I think the parties have the ability to switch. They can pile, and if the one question's going well for them, they can increase their number of questions.
And trade it off against your other ones, yeah.
Yeah, and you do see the Speaker sometimes reward parties with extra questions.
Yes.
That's not uncommon too.
Or knock them off if he feels they've transgressed.
Let's just have a clip of probably what is the most famous clip ever from New Zealand Parliament.
New Zealand first.
8 votes in favour.
Te Pāti Māori.
E ono ngā pōti e whakahe. Hawana! Hawhakamanu whiriti a koe heu! Kamate, kamate,
Yeah, I mean, that clip obviously...
Yeah, that's Marty Clark, isn't it, from the on the Treaty Principles Bill?
Yeah, I mean, that clip was viewed around
How many
the world,
times?
billions times or something, you know, and it's an insane amount. And I want to say a couple of things here, and I want us just to walk through this. Early on, because I want to get us to just finish on where Parliament is going and the evolution of changes in tikanga and this debate, which is very real now about the Māori Party was punished, and people will be familiar with that. They ended up getting he suspended Parliament. There was a punishment via the special committee that looks into issues of rules in Parliament, the Privileges Committee. They handed down the harshest punishment, I think, ever. The two leaders were suspended for 21 days, I think it was, and many people felt that was unfair. But let's not just focus so much on that. People know that story. In the early days of Parliament, there were translators and people spoke in te reo Māori, but there was a very long gap before Māori and te reo Māori became the official language that could be spoken in Parliament, and it was 1987. So you're talking well over 100 years. And I think it's fair to say in the last 10 or so years there's been a lot of evolution in terms of trying to fit more tikanga into Parliament. Would you agree with that? And there's obviously, from the Māori Party's perspective, who obviously have a lot of issues with Parliament and would like a Māori Parliament for that matter, and clearly feel that Parliament is against them in many ways with the rules, are pushing for change here. So this is a very live debate.
Oh, it certainly is. And yes, we have translators in Parliament. It's common even for Pākehā members of Parliament, especially Chloe Swarbrick, who we've talked about, will often ask her questions in te reo Māori in the House, without a blink of an eye, really, nowadays. But yes, it presents a real challenge, doesn't it? Because it's not that unusual to see haka in Parliament, and you'll see, especially big things like a treaty settlement bill, you'll see a waiata from the public gallery. But I guess the difference is that they've forwarded this to the Speaker in advance, got permission for it, and I think too one of the issues, not to argue the rights and the wrongs of what Māori Party did on those days, but I think there was great exception taken to the fact that there wasn't an apology and that they hadn't turned up to various committees who wanted to discuss the thing. But yes, a big challenge about how tikanga is taken into the House now, and that is, as you say, a very live debate.
Yeah, and I don't want to speak for Māori on this issue, but it's clear that that the Māori Party has a lot of issues with the way in which Parliament's worked. But it does feel like that's going to be an issue for the Speaker and speakers in the future to grapple with in terms of how to continue to reflect tikanga, because it's pretty clear looking back that for a very long time, despite the treaty being signed in 1840, first Māori MPs 1868, interpreters in the 1880s and 1900s that for a very long time Parliament in the Westminster system, I think you could mount a case, wasn't serving Māori particularly well. It makes you realise too, the fight, that wasn't an easy thing, right? That people fought for that, to get that right to speak te reo.
Yes, and I think keen watchers of the House will see a funny sort of tributary of that debate with Winston Peters, who takes great exception to the word Aotearoa being used in Parliament. He says, that someone's trying to change the name of the country without the consent of the people. He's drawn the Speaker into lots of debate about that too, so it continues in that sense as well.
Look, that's where we're going to finish it. But by and large, as I say, I found this a difficult process to pull it all together with all the different threads of it. But I still think it's the old thing, isn't it? Democracy's, there's many quotes. There's lots of things wrong with it. But in the end, it is the best we've got. And we've got to protect this system, and we've got to continue to have buy-in on some sort of rules. Because as they say, if you don't have debate and you don't have that contest of ideas, what do you have? You're going to have people, it's going to resort to swords or whatever other quotes you could come up with.
Is that your excuse for giving me a pop quiz on standing orders?
I don't think I'm ever going to live that one down. Hey,
I'll get you back next week.
Yeah, I know you will. I've made a rod from my own back there. Hey, thank you very much for listening to Context. We do appreciate everyone who has tuned in to the show, and we look forward to hearing from you again next week. Thanks for listening. You can follow or listen to Context for free at rnz.co.nz or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also watch the show on YouTube. Just search for Context RNZ. If there's something in the news you want some context for, do flick us an email. We appreciate the feedback. context@rnz.co.nz. Context is hosted by Guyon Espiner and myself, Corin Dan. Our producers are Miranda Fisher and William Ray. Our sound and video engineers are Kori Fui Maono and Jordan Edwards. Our production coordinator is Brianna Uritich Gregg, and the executive producer is Tim Watkin.